just put that idea out there and see where we go in our program today. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our Master of Ceremonies for today's webinar, Peggy Ujiri, who is joining us today from the great city of Philadelphia, my own home, where she is celebrating Memorial Day with her family, her growing family. Peggy lives in Denver area with her husband, Kenji. She serves as the executive director of UPF Colorado and the Rocky Mountain coordinator for IMAP. Peggy has, for the past 40 years, experienced in organizing interfaith and intercultural conferences and promoting faith-based values in the U.S. and internationally. Peggy, thank you, and please, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks, Hans. Thank you for that introduction. And thank you for joining us today. And our topic today is the intersection of media and religion. So as I think everyone on this call is aware, religion is not being covered in the news in the way it was in the past. And perhaps it's never been adequately covered, but now with the demise of most newspapers, most news media outlets have been scaling back their reporting on religion, and they've done away with religious editors and so forth. And I found on the Radiant Foundation site a 2022 survey that said that only 20% of journalists felt that they understood the nuances of faith. And this may be one reason why they hesitate to cover it. But a full 53% said that the media actively ignores religion as an aspect of society and culture. This in spite of the fact that many people would consider religion an important part of their own lives and a directive force in their life. So on this webinar, we're going to be addressing questions like whether there is an anti-religious bias in mainstream media, and if so, why? And why faith seems increasingly irrelevant in today's society. Our first speaker is perhaps the foremost expert on this in the nation, and maybe one of the foremost in the world. It's Dr. Deborah Mason, who's a professor emerita from the University of Missouri School of Journalism, School of Religion and the Professions. And Hans had actually done a little research on Mizzou's journalism school, and I guess it was the first journalism school ever established in the nation. And therefore, they wrote some of the first standards on journalism, the ethical standards, and many of them are still current today. So Dr. Mason's research and teaching centers on the religious literacy of professionals, especially journalists. She served as the inaugural Journalism Religious Literacy Teaching Fellow at Harvard Divinity School from 2018 to 2020, and she taught religious literacy and journalism classes at the Newseum's Religious Freedom Center. During her 2 decades of leading the Religious News Association, she raised nearly $20 million for training and tools such as the ReligionStylebook.com and ReligionLink.com. As a publisher of Religion News Service, the world's only non-sectarian wire service exclusively covering religion, she led a multi-million-dollar expansion that converted the Religious News Service from a for-profit to a nonprofit and quadrupled monthly online traffic. She created 5 local religion sites and garnered unprecedented industry honors and oversaw the rebuilding of ReligionNews.com. She's written and edited more than a dozen trade publications and book chapters on religion and news. So we're very honored to have her here today, and please join me in welcoming Dr. Deborah Mason.
Thank you. I always feel very old when I hear that. But thank you so much. And I am recovering from a cold, so I'm going to just apologize in advance that I have a lot of throat clearing and I'm going to have to sip some tea from time to time. first of all, I want to thank everybody for inviting me to be on the panel and for contributing in whatever way I can. I have I have a short time and a lot of different bits of information to share. So some of it may not seem entirely linked, but I'll try to wrap it up toward the end. And the first plea I want to make in these conversations is to not use the word media. And that's a tough sell. I've never been successful in getting people not to use the word media. But the complication for people like myself is that media is a term that encompasses so many diverse things. It includes film, it includes magazines, it includes TikTok, it includes Facebook. And so we have so many different things that fall under that category. And I'm going to be really focusing on religion and news because I think we should be clear what we're talking about. And in a lot of cases, I think in the introduction, what we saw is concern about how the news covers religion. So that's what I'm going to focus on. But I'm that's just one of those things, that word media. So I think, first of all, we should be really precise about what we're talking about when we approach these issues. I'm going to start with the question of, is there an anti-religious bias in the media? And I will say yes, and I will say no, because, journalists particularly, and other news professionals, they're comprised of the general public, right? And we know the trends, and I'm not going to talk about the trends toward secularism that have occurred and are occurring in the West. We know about this. And the journalists, at least in the West, are comprised from the public, right? So on occasion, in my experience, I have met journalists who are biased against religion. However, I would say in general, those journalists are what I would describe more accurately as secular, as agnostic, as a few maybe, or overt atheists. But at the same time, what we know from some surveys of people who specialize in coverage of news, we know that that community of people, members of Religion News Association and so forth, that a very high percentage of those, the last data that I surveyed was 75%. 75% of that group of people actually were raised in a religious tradition and are affectionate toward that faith tradition or practice that faith tradition, and have a deep knowledge of that faith tradition. Many religion specialists in the news business have gone to seminary, like I have. I think Harvard Divinity produces a lot of people who have gone on into journalism specifically and into other genres of media. So, I've never been of the belief, and I don't see data that supports that, that there is an actual anti-religion bias. There are a lot more factors, and I don't have time to get into them, but if somebody wants to ask about it, I can talk about it. And Hans really briefly touched on some of it, but it really has to do with the complexity of religion, the challenges for getting it correct, the fact that religion is private and therefore difficult for journalists to access without really having deep relationships within it. Because of all of those things and the decline in specialists, these things all together mean that you have coverage that these days is much more shallow than it used to be in the peak of religion news, which was from about the mid 1990s to about the mid 2000s. And so that makes it a bigger challenge than it used to be. But I don't really believe that there's actually a bias. I kind of compare it to when you get a new car. You know, I used to drive a Honda CRV with the old tire in the back, and it was gold. It was 2001. I loved that car. And when I got it years ago, I'd never really seen any on the road. And then as soon as I got that car, I started seeing it all over the place, you know. And I think that for people of faith, particularly who are frustrated with coverage of religion in the news, that's a phenomena that they often see, that negative coverage, that inaccurate coverage, and that tends to be often all that they see. They don't necessarily always see some of the stories about all of the positive things that faith communities do for our society and for our world. I'm not going to really talk about why is faith irrelevant or not. I think that's for somebody with a lot bigger paycheck than I have as a retired professor. I think that's a theological question. I think that's a cultural question. But I think, you know, I think we can point to a lot of ideas and theories that are out there. We know the ideas, you know, we know that younger generations, and I have 3 children who are in their 20s or early 30s, so I'm very connected to Gen Z and millennials. You know, I think that a lot of the information that we have tells us, you know, they're distrustful of institutions. They are wanting to see positive change on things like the environment and human rights and justice and things like this. They're concerned about fairness and about their futures. And so, you know, I think for faith communities that are wondering, you know, asking themselves this question, are religious institutions irrelevant? I think they need to look at finding places where they can intersect with younger generations so that their efforts fit in with the attitudes and views and priorities of younger generations. And that's all I'll say, because I'm not really a theologian. So I'm not going to address that question so much. What I do want to mention, however, I want to get I think I probably have maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Is that about it? Nod your head, Peggy, if that's about right, or if, yeah. Okay.
You can have 4 or 5.
Okay. You know, I'm a historian at heart, and I'd say every 10 or 15 years, you see initiatives like these. They've been promoted by different entities going back as far as the 1920s and 1930s. You can see these questions of how can faith communities, how can people of goodwill have a larger presence in the public discourse. And the answers have varied somewhat. And only in one example did it really result in better coverage, more diverse coverage, just fabulous coverage, in my opinion, And that was in this period of the 1990s through really by 2005, 2006. And this was the era of religion sections. And we really saw at that time the news media seeking to broaden its audiences. It had the funds. And so we saw religion sections just blossom. And this was where you saw feature stories, and you saw my favorite kind of religion news, which is religiously literate news that helps the public understand more about diverse faiths. And you would have, as an example, the Dallas Morning News had an 8-page section. They had a full-time graphic artist. They had full color. They had book reviews in that section. They had letters to the editor. It was phenomenal. And it was a section that ran on Saturday, and it had 50% of the subscribers to the Dallas Morning News read that section based on their own data. That's extraordinarily high readership, extraordinarily high. These days, you send out a mass email and you hope that, 2%, 1% open it. So very high readership. And that section, unfortunately, like virtually almost every section in the country, there are very few print and online religion sections now in daily newspapers. And the reason is cost. And the reason is that advertisers would not advertise. So, for instance, Hobby Lobby is based in Texas. If Hobby Lobby has owners who are very dedicated in their Christian faith, but yet those owners would not advertise in that religion section. So, and this was true across the board. And it's true now and today. Religion news does not draw enough money to survive in the daily newspaper business. Daily newspaper is kind of anachronistic, but anyway, and we don't have, there's just not enough grant money and enough funding out there to keep it alive. And so we have to look at different and new ways. I'm pretty much out of time, but I do have ideas about this, and maybe we can get into that in the Q&A or in some conversation afterwards. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Thank you. That was very informative. We're going to move on to our next speaker, which is Professor Joel Campbell. He has been an associate professor in Brigham Young University School of Communications since 2002. And Professor Campbell teaches communication studies and journalism courses, and actively, sorry, I also had a cold, actively researches media and religion, media ethics, and law and freedom of information issues. His publications include Mitt Romney's Religion, a 5-factor model for analysis of media representation in Mormon identity, and Artemis Ward, the forgotten influence of the genial showman, and Mormon lecture on public opinion of Mormons in the United States and Great Britain. Also, Baptism of Fire, a comparative analysis of media coverage of the LDS Church's practice of proxy baptisms. So please join me in welcoming Professor Joel Campbell. Professor Campbell?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
already?
we hear you fine. We hear you fine.
And you can see my slides, right?
No, I'm not seeing your slides right now.
Oh, okay. Let's do that again.
EJ, is he able to share or? Okay. All right. There we go.
There we
Yeah,
go.
now we're
Okay.
seeing.
Let me just start my timer here to make sure I stay on time. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, and I really appreciate following Deborah. She is certainly a long time, like they said, world expert in this field. And in fact, this opening picture, I'm in a Buddhist temple and school in Myanmar, and it was because of Deborah Mason that I was actually at this conference, because she helped set it up. So she is by far and so I just kind of follow around things that she's done. But I'm going to take the assumption that maybe that we need to reset the relationship between religion and journalism. And again, I also agree with Deborah that using the term media is not helpful, that journalism or news, if we're talking about that area, if we're talking about social media or other things, there's probably different strategies or different ideas we need to talk about. But when we're talking about journalists covering news or religion reporters, that's what I want to focus in on. Yeah, we need some help. I had an opportunity to take a group of students to New York a few years ago where we talked about this topic of religion and faith. And I love this little, it's kind of like Lucy's stand, but it's out in front of a local church on the Upper East Side. And yeah, we all need spiritual help. And the pastor was in. And so I think journalists, spokespeople, and the public, and we also, I think I'm going to just add a little bit about religious freedom in here, about needing some help there. This is often quoted, and there's a book now called Holy Envy, which I've read recently. It's an amazing book, highly recommend it. But Trista Stendahl, former dean of the Harvard School of Divinity, said these three things, and I teach this to my journalism students now. Maybe journalism purists may not always agree with all of these three things, but I teach them anyway. When trying to understand another religion, you should ask the adherents of that religion and not its enemies. I think good religion reporters are going to go talk to the adherents of that faith. They may talk to critics as well, but they're going to get an answer. Don't compare your best to their worst. That's often when I did this research on Mitt Romney's faith and huge amount of contact we went over to analyze the Mitt Romney first candidacy for the president. There was a lot of this. We had a lot of Baptists comparing Mormonism, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the best and the worst, and it was kind of there. And this is maybe the one where the journalistic purists say, well, we can't have holy envy because we're journalists. But I'm going to say for my students, I always say every time we go to a sacred space, whether it's the Salt Lake Greek Orthodox Church or the local Buddhist temple in Salt Lake City or wherever it is, leave room for holy envy. And that's part of their assignment, is to come away and say, what was your holy envy? And often it's the stained glass, it's the yoga, it's whatever it is. Students love that idea of let's find holy envy in anything we do. So here's some of the issues, and I think Deborah's already touched on some of these. Some of the things that I think divide journalists and perhaps the things they cover. There is a different worldview. Someone has said that journalists need the bacteria count on the milk of human kindness. So we're a little bit more, we want facts, we want, information. And some of the stories of miracles and of things we cannot explain scientifically may be difficult in that kind of protection. Also, I think the public needs to understand that good journalism is not necessarily what some might call devotional, confessional, or promotional. That it's not a journalist's job to go in and do something that might be part of a church newspaper or a church, we have the local Catholic, Intermountain Catholic newspaper here. It's very devotional about local Catholics. Now, and I agree with what Deborah said, those who often are drawn to religious reporting often have a faith tradition or a background in that. But when we were talking about the Mitt Romney campaign, most political reporters did not have that and unfortunately made a lot of errors. So I'm going to say some journalists may come from a background of religious illiteracy or lack of respect for a frame that respects religious and belief as a valid point of view. And we found that a lot in the Mitt Romney political coverage because of it was not there. Also, again, I think we need to understand it's not a journalist's job to defend or promote a point of view of faith. I get that a lot in my faith tradition. Well, the journalist should have done it this way. And I say, well, the best you can expect is that they're fair and that they go and get all points of view, and that they talk to believers and critics as well in that mix. Secular journalists will be fair, but will not engage in confessional or devotional journalism that might be expected by some religious organizations. This is the same as true for public relations. A lot of my students in public relations say, well, we go into this and my boss wanted them to do, you know, a great puff piece on our company. It's the same goes for religion. You can't expect that. The best you can expect is they cover you fairly. The best religious organization is to provide balance and fairness. Taking untrained journalists to the professional level of religious reporting or understanding will take some effort, but that effort is worth it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go forward. I think the Radiant Foundation's going to quote from a Harris poll that I don't have to quote from because they're going to talk about it. But I believe that there is substantial evidence that there is a need for more religious coverage, that people in the public around the world want that, and that there is professional groups like Religion News Association, Society of Professional Journalists, or whatever it might be, that can help as conduits to provide better training and understanding about religion reporting. And so I'm not going to read all of these, but I think, and Deborah is absolutely nail on the head when she says it's a very difficult economic situation in the media, in the news media right now, for journalism. There's not, some of our local papers here have gone from 20 reporters down to 2 or 3, which is just very sad. They don't have the times and the resources to cover religion the way they did. But I think we could still make an effort to convince, and I should say convince news media owners that the need for religion coverage. I think we can identify groups that maybe could provide training, obviously in the education front, and Deborah has been a leader in this, increasing journalism and religion courses in education institutions. I'm proud of what we do here at BYU. Reporter training at professional conferences, helping give out other ideas. So here's just a real mishmash of places that we might turn for some help. Religion News Association is wonderful. Peggy Fletcher Stack here at the Salt Lake Tribune is the director of the International Association of Religion Journalists. They're doing some great things. We have a religion and media interest group that's part of an academic group that Deborah and I have been in the past. Here at BYU, we have a Religious Freedom Annual Review. Last year in 2023, I'm really happy to report that we did the first ever, hope it's not the first one only, Latin American Religion Journalist Forum. And we were able to bring in Latin American journalists from everywhere from Argentina, Colombia, Ecuador, all those. We had many Latin American journalists here, along with representatives of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Catholic Church and Seventh-day Adventist and many different groups, both religious, and was a wonderful discussion about how to improve religion reporting in Latin America. That's an example of something we might do. So here is just so many things that are out there. I've been part of a group called the Latter-day Saints and Media Studies Symposium. We met last year in Las Vegas and had a wonderful conference talking about how our faith is covered, but there's so many things. Religion Media Center in the UK, Pluralism Project. There's all these links, and I just put my link to these slides in the chat box so you can see those. So, and Joe Grimm, a friend, formerly at the Detroit News, is now at Michigan State University, does a wonderful series about Q&A about different groups and religions called Bias Buster Guides. And there's also international groups. I just wanted to mention one as an example. We don't hear this term very often in the United States, but APPG is all party group. And they have an international freedom of religion and belief. APPG in the Parliament in the UK. We are going on a study abroad this summer, and we are going to be my students and I are going to be part of a conference at Parliament that it's going to be talking about these issues. And part of their focus has been, how can we have educational institutions talk about this in terms of education? I think the Brits, actually, the UK does a much better job of having a curriculum teaching about religion in their schools. And also there's a focus on helping journalists improve their coverage. Anyway, those are just some thoughts. I'm out of time, and we can talk more about other things as we move on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Campbell, and thanks for bringing to our attention so many great resources that are already out there on this topic. I next would like to introduce our third speaker. If you saw the flyer, our third speaker was Angela Redding, but because she came down with a cold and she has sent her colleague to take her place, and that is John Dye. So we want to welcome John Dye to our meeting today. He currently serves as the executive director of Skylight.org, which is an initiative of the Radiant Foundation. And Skylight's mission is to help young adults live happier and more fulfilling lives through a personal relationship with God. John has been a longtime participant in social media, and I use the word media there only because it was on his bio, Deborah. Social media, and has helped numerous companies effectively incorporate social media and influencer outreach tactics into their overall marketing strategies. That's something we could all learn from. He enjoys experiencing how technology creates connection, camaraderie, and compassion between individuals. John also serves on the board of I Care for Kids, a nonprofit that helps children receive much needed eyeglasses and vision correction to help them succeed in school and life. He and his wife Jenny are also advocates of the arts and humanities, and both serve on the Utah Metropolitan Ballet Board. In his spare time, which how in the world does he have spare time with all of this? He enjoys running, keeping up with the latest trends in technology, and spending time with his wife Jenny and their family. So please join me in welcoming John Dye.
Peggy, thank you so much. So kind. And I want to say specifically, Joel and Deborah, thank you so much for your remarks. Just wonderful thoughts, and I'm excited to get into the panel part of this and learn more from both of you. I should mention I am a pinch hitter, so it's the bottom of the ninth, and my slides actually didn't download, so I'm just going to walk you through verbally some of the things that the Faith in Media Initiative have been doing around this topic. I put the link into the chat so you can go there, and basically I'm just going to summarize a lot of the great research that you will find at that link, and it is appropriate, very appropriate for this discussion. It hits it head on, and it will augment, I believe, a lot of the things that you've already heard today. So in September of 22, there was a global faith and news study that the Radiant Foundation, you can find us at radiant.org, that we partnered with HarrisX, a global research firm to undertake. And our goal was to understand the relationship between news, between religion and faith. So those three things, and the impact of the news depictions of faith and on faith, and how we could better understand what's happening in that current landscape. So it's a little bit older, it's fall of 2022, but the outcomes, I believe, are still very valid for us today. Now, as we look at this, I think it's important to say, what was the landscape? We just had under 9,500 participants in that survey. There were 30 in-depth interviews, specifically with journalists and editors. And the scope was 18 countries and 5 languages. So when you think about this, it wasn't just US-centric, it was global in nature, and I think that's important to note. So the key findings that came out of this, and again, that you can find at that link that is in the chat, is this. 82% of those global respondents define themselves as religious, spiritual, or a person of faith. So if you think about that, literally 8 in 10 people describe themselves as religious, spiritual, or a person of faith. I think that's very astounding. Now, when we think of the news perception specifically, of those respondents, 53% believe news ignores religion rather than appropriately addressing it. That was mentioned and that was hit on earlier, and we can go into a little bit more of why that may be, and some of the other things that we found take a shot at understanding that a little bit more. 43% of those surveyed feel that current news coverage of religion creates unease and anxiety. 61% say news perpetuates faith-based stereotypes, and 78% believe religious stereotypes should get as much attention as race and gender stereotypes. So it's important. It's something that we should hit, that we should address.
Oh, hey,
that
is
we
this
should
Joe
talk
Hayes?
about in our news
It's Joe
coverage.
Hayes, yes. Oh, okay.
And specifically, when we talked about
I
workplace
have a
and faith secrecy, how open can we be in the workplace about our faith and our beliefs? This is interesting. Over 1 in 4 globally keep their faith secret in the workplace. So over 25%, 1 in 4 that you walk past in the halls today would be keeping their faith secret. And if you look at specific countries, it's interesting to note in the US, that's 33%, Australia, 38%, China, 49%, Singapore, 47%, and India, 39%. So again, the ability to be your whole self and bring your whole self to work, that's something that needs to be addressed as well. So when we look at what the opportunities are that exist out there from this study, if we look at the audience demand, 56% say they're more likely to engage with high quality faith and religious reporting. So they say over half of the people say that they would engage with that if it's high quality. 63% see a need for high quality content on faith and religion, and 56% want coverage of complex religious issues. Now, one term that we've discussed a lot here at Radiant is the need for faith fluency, the need to be able to understand others' beliefs, their core belief sets, their religions, their rites, their rituals, and being able to do that. So when we talk about complex religious issues, faith fluency is a key piece of that, is the covenantal pluralism, the ability to be able to speak and be spoken to in a way that respects what you believe and also respects what others believe. 63% agree on the need for diverse faith perspectives in the news, and 1 in 3 follow news sources focused on faith-based news. So there is a need for this. That's being recognized from this survey. There is a need for faith-focused reporting and news. So when we talk about improvements, 46% believe faith and religious groups need to provide more spokespeople with lived experiences. Consider this. Many people, I believe from a journalistic perspective, sometimes because of the shrinking newsrooms and other things that are happening, they may not have the ability to corroborate everything they're writing with somebody that is within that faith. Imagine if there was, for lack of a better term, a Rolodex or a database where you could actually reach out to individuals who would be willing to share their beliefs to corroborate what you're reporting on. Some of that exists already. Could it be refined and made better? Absolutely. So that's one key piece. So again, there's a need for that. Now, as we look at some of these insights, why is this happening? Deborah hit upon this, as did Joel a little bit, but I'm going to cover just briefly some of the things that came out, again, from this study at that link, which talks about why this may be occurring. Number one is marginalization. Faith and religion coverage is marginalized due to newsroom dynamics and budget cuts. Again, those shrinking newsrooms, now somebody that's writing on maybe sports or another topic is also covering religion. So that niche news that we got in the past in those writers, now they may be covering 2 to 3 bases instead of the single base that they used to cover. And that's something that it's a reality in today's newsroom that we have to live with. But there is also a fear of getting it wrong. There's a fear of offending, sensitivity issues, polarization, all of that deters coverage. There are 2 quotes I'm going to give, again, which are on that website. One from Kenya says, "I don't cover such stories because you never know when you are offending someone." So again, worry of offense. The second comes from Turkey. "Religion is so personal. I'm doing a job for public good. Why do I have to explain something about religion? I mean, the reader doesn't need that. They can just download the Bible or Quran and read it." So again, some of the direct quotes that came from this survey. Another issue is diversity in newsroom dynamics. So newsrooms, again, because they're shrinking, and even before they were shrinking, they rarely represent the plurality of religious viewpoints, right? So faith fluency, the ability to be able to speak to others and understand their rites and rituals and belief sets. There's also a concern about impartiality and reputation among journalists with strong faith backgrounds. So again, a couple of quotes that I'd like to give. This one from Turkey. I was asked to write a piece because I was the only Muslim on staff. Another quote from Kenya. In our team right now, we do not have any person who is a Muslim or any person who is of another faith. Not that we hate them or we don't want to recruit them, but it's just because they are not people who apply for our jobs. So that's a reality facing newsrooms as well. Another reason maybe why this is occurring is clicks for controversy. Faith and religion are not seen as drivers for reader engagement unless it's tied to controversy in many aspects. So again, there's a need for clickbait. There's a need to bring in the money. You need the clicks, as Deborah alluded to earlier, with advertising and other things. So again, you always hear about so-and-so behaving badly, the Catholic priest or the Mormon bishop or the whatever faith leader. You hear about that and that'll get the clicks. But on the more mainstream news, talking about what the religions are doing from a good perspective, rarely does that bring the controversy, and therefore it doesn't get the clicks. So a couple more examples that I'll bring up. This one from South Africa. The news that creates traction is crime and politics. It is made clear to me from my editor that these are the paper's priorities and they have numbers to back them up. Ecuador says this: I get feedback every week about how my last story performed. This sets me a target for what I do this week. So again, it's one of those ever increasing, hey, we need the clicks, we need the attention, we need to stay real and relevant to our audience, and therefore they're pushed in certain directions. And then I'd like to talk about the last one, stereotyping. Lack of diverse news sources and spokespeople perpetuate negative stereotypes. Just a couple quotes here, one from the US. It's usually covered as a feature of conservative politics, talking about religion and faith. And the Philippines says this: we are unintentionally creating a stigma or a bad stereotype, particularly on our Muslim brothers and sisters in the Philippines. So there's worries about creating stigma and doing other things. So what's the path forward, right? Where do we go from here? Just a few thoughts here. We definitely want to ensure accurate representation in the faith, in news and all forms of the media. So that faith fluency that I talked about, I think, is important. Obviously, we want to increase trust and confidence among all audiences. And finally, implement changes to create mutually beneficial outcomes for the news and the media organizations as well as their audiences. Not to speak of the religious traditions, right? The organizations that are promoting religion and belief sets that are important. So as we think about this, we need to have diverse spokespeople available, and we need things to happen both on the journalistic side, but also on the religious side. We can't have this, right? We're seeking for this. And it's not, we can't villainize or vilify one side or the other. Both need to improve to see the future we all want to see, which is more accurate reporting, more detailed reporting, and a fair viewpoint on religious beliefs and outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you for bringing up and also for giving us some ideas about where things could be improved in the future and how they could, and some of the initiatives that are going on in that direction. EJ, if possible, could you bring our three panelists on the screen now? Do I just not have the right view?
Go to speaker view.
Okay, all right, thank you. I would just like to quickly ask each one of you, you've obviously devoted a lot of time and energy and heart really to this topic. And I'd like to start with Deborah and ask, what was it that motivated you in your own life to to take on this topic and has kept you going through the years in addressing it?
Well, I grew up a person of faith. I went to seminary right after getting a bachelor's degree, and I actually thought I would work in religious media. But I went to a very small liberal arts school that didn't have a robust journalism program. So I went to Northwestern's journalism program. And while I was there, I sort of got bitten by the news bug, I guess we would say. I really enjoyed working for secular organizations. And my first job was actually covering politics. But I really didn't like covering politics. A lot of people think it's, the supreme beat to have, but I felt it was very predictable. He said, she said, and it just wasn't, it wasn't something where I felt as though you could really get to the meat of issues. And as it transpired, I eventually became a religion journalist and have been endlessly fascinated with it ever since. And so then when I left reporting, I focused my scholarship there and also, became the first executive director of paid executive director of Religion News Association and founded its foundation and so on and so forth. So.
Well, thank you. That's pretty remarkable. You just kept going and getting further and further into it.
Yeah.
How about Professor Campbell?
Interesting story. My dad was a contractor. And you may not realize that, well, it's gone now, but up in a little valley above Ogden, Utah, was a Catholic monastery. My dad was hired to build a bunch of milk barns and other barns for the monks. And at 8 years old, I just sparked my interest in different faiths because these wonderful monks took me under their wing and I always got, I didn't have to work with my dad. I got to go out and do things and they showed me around. I learned, but I was fascinated in their Vespers and every night after we got done working at the monastery, there was always this amazing honey that they produced with a loaf of wheat bread. Anyway, that started my lifelong journey of interfaith connections. I went on to become a journalist, but I always wanted, and at our newspaper, it was kind of like they switched it around. There was a religion editor, but it was asked, and I was raised my hand and said, I want to go cover this faith, that faith. I served a Latter-day Saint mission in Korea and just became fascinated with Buddhism and Taoism and Confucianism. Anyway, so it's been a lifelong journey, and it's been fun to combine my interest of faith and I guess my holy envy of faith with journalism.
Thank you. How about you, John?
Yeah, incredible faith journeys we've heard. Mine is somewhat similar. I grew up in a Christian household in Montana and also served a 2-year service mission in Taiwan. So had a chance to encounter Taoists and Buddhists and others of other faiths and just saw that they had something that I really admired. And I love the interfaith approach to this too. The faith fluency I discussed. My goal every day is to understand more and to have bigger ears than I have lips or a mouth, right? To listen more than I speak. So from there, I just wanted to continue and make a bigger difference in the world because I believe life is better with God in it for me. And I have a desire to share that with others, to increase their happiness, their joy, the things that they can experience. Again, I kind of look at life as a mathematical equation, and one of those constants in that equation for me is a higher power or is God. And I believe to be happy, to have a true equation, that has to be there for everyone. And I'll just speak from a Radiant perspective as well, radiant.org. Our goal is simple. We want to cultivate a more personal, positive place for faith within modern society. We believe that there's a seat at the table that needs to be taken. We believe society is better with people who have strong beliefs and who treat their neighbors and in a good way and feel a responsibility toward a higher power to assist others and make this world a better place.
Thank you. And the International Media Association for Peace has a goal of making encouraging a moral media, a media where our stories and our reporting is not just informing people, but taking a perspective where we're supporting moral values, like not promoting one religion or another, but realizing that moral values are a common good that benefits the whole of society. So I would just like to, we're getting close to the end, but I'd just like to give each of you a chance to have a closing comment and perhaps what your number one suggestion is about what could be done to improve religious reporting in the news. Deborah?
One thing. I think organizations like this are most effective, and I think we saw this with Romney, coverage of Mitt Romney and attitudes towards members of the LDS Church. I think they are most effective when they are themselves writing op-eds, speaking directly to the media in terms of getting their content in the media, creating content, making it easy for news professionals to consume that content, and then putting that content in places where the public is. Newspapers are not where the public is anymore. The New York Times gets most of its money from games and its cooking content. We need to remember that we are in a transitional period in the decline of newspapers. Think about the transition from radio to television, and newspapers are going to become something very different. And so I personally am not of the belief that investing in newspapers, it's a terrible thing to say, but I don't believe investing in newspapers and news, direct news content is an effective use of funds. That's my view.
Professor Campbell?
Yes, well, I'm going to retire this year from Brigham Young University, and my favorite class to teach is media and world religions. It's become my all-time favorite. So from that experience, I just think we need to treat, whether it's Baptists, Catholics, people of no faith, we need to get them out in the sacred spaces of our communities and learn what wonderful people are out there. I mean, to me, that has been the highlight. And to me, when students at the end of the course say, you know what, I thought I'd just learn a lot about, different faiths, but it has changed me. I now have a deep, abiding respect for my Catholic brothers and sisters. I have a deep and abiding respect for that monk up in, we used to go, maybe back in the day up at the Catholic monastery. They've dedicated their entire life to that. Or to my Muslim brothers and sisters, wow, they pray 5 times a day. I can barely pray once a day. So there's this respect that comes. So I don't know how I translate that, but journalism or communications and education that focuses on understanding other faiths in a way that respects them and has that where it changes people to no longer other them, to say, oh no, there's something else, there's somebody else, they're different. And unfortunately, we see our world divided right now in the Israeli-Hamas conflict. And there's some legitimate reasons there, but I feel like the othering that's going on is really tough. And I wish we could get over that. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm babbling. But I think building interfaith understanding, that holy envy, to me would be, if I had a perfect world, I would like everybody to be involved in that.
Thank you. And I hope you can continue in working that.
Yeah.
How about John?
Yeah, I echo what Deborah and Joel have said. I think as we talk about media now, not just news, but media, we have to be where we're real and relevant, where religion and beliefs are real and relevant, where that can make a difference. And so whether that's in the news sphere, whether that's on social media or those other spots, I think those of us with strong personal beliefs, with a religious faith, I think we need to step up and stand out. There's a lot of dark and dreary things out there in the world, right? And that includes social media. So be a light to others and uplift others and share that faith fluency that you have with others. Show that respect, as Joel has talked about, for those other belief sets that exist out there. I believe at the end of the day, there's more that unites us than divides us. My personal belief is we're all children of a loving Heavenly Father, a God who is out there, who wants the best for us. And just like those of you that are parents, you want your children and to get along with their siblings. There are ways that we can do that. And I believe we have a more civil and a stronger society when there is strong belief sets that bring us together. And I believe when you get down to the baseline of each religion, regardless of tradition or spiritual palette, there's so much more that unites us than divides us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, John. Thank you for all of our speakers. And just to finish up, I would like to invite, I see that the president of the UPF, Universal Peace Federation, is online with us. And he's also the chairman of UPF North America. So I'd like to invite him if he would just like to make a few remarks. Dr. Jenkins?
Thank you. Thank you, Peggy. And to Hans and Pierre for putting this program together. It's wonderful. Deborah, Joel, and John, thank you so much. It's very important that we have this kind of discussion. I'm president of the Washington Times Holdings that owns the Washington Times. We have two religion reporters, Mark Kellner, who wrote for the Deseret News for years, and probably a friend of yours, Joel, and also Billy Hallowell is doing a great job. We have found that to reach the faith-based audience, we had to create a portal. It's called highergroundtimes.com. highergroundtimes.com. It's in the regular website of the Daily Washington Times. It's in the print too. But we found that a lot of faith people were not wanting to wade through all the political news and all the conservative things and liberal things. They want to go right to the cutting edge of what's affecting their faith. So that has been a huge breakthrough. We got 40,000 subscribers in about 4 months, and it's exploding. So we're really excited about that. So I think, Deborah, you're right. The New York Times, its #1 subscription base is coming from games, games and so forth, and also the food the food section. But I think the newspaper business is transforming, but it is going to go digital more and more because people read every day, all day on their phone, and how to make it so that we can touch their hearts and really come closer. Another thing that was shocking to us, our president, Chris Dolan, we had one major editor that used to be with us, and now she teaches at University of Southern, UCLA. And she was shocked when she brought her journalism class to the Washington Times. She herself, who's she's a Democrat, she's more on the liberal side, but she felt uncomfortable that things are being pushed in the journalism schools that also encourage people to be advocates and activism journalism or advocacy. That's a shock, not getting both sides of the story. I'm sure you're all believers in getting both sides of the story. So thank you for this program.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jenkins. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. And I want you to know that this was also streamed live on Facebook, but it's also going to be posted on YouTube. So we'll be sure to send out the link if you would like to share it with any friends that couldn't get on today. And so we're very grateful to our speakers, and
Great job.
We wish you all the best in your work, and we're going to keep take inspiration from what you've taught us and go on to work and try to make headway in this area. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Goodbye now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Great,
Peggy.
great show.
Thank you. Thank you, Hans.
Yeah, thanks for showing the program again, Hans and Peggy. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I don't think we have anybody to ask questions to anymore.
Is Dr. Jenkins still on the call?
No, that was from last year. Actually, I think it was the year before, maybe.
Oh, I thought I saw him with the two little ear pods.
Oh,
On
maybe
just
he
a
is
moment
on.
ago.
Let me see if I can see who's on. Nope.
Okay, wishful thinking.
I mean, he might have been on for a moment. I think he's still on the plane, isn't he?
Oh, okay.
Well, he was on the plane last night and he said 14 hours, so I guess he would have arrived by now.
Okay. Yeah, my mistake. Yeah, one thing that occurred to me when I was listening to their discussions, I think now because of the problem in Japan, we need to start emphasizing religious freedom a lot more. In America, I think we've become too comfortable in thinking that we have all these freedoms in America, but we need to start becoming sensitive to what others are going through and becoming more diligent and more responsible as believers.
Right. Well, that's the thing. We always get interested in religious freedom when we're getting attacked, but sometimes we forget about it when it's over.
Yes, yes.
But let's see. I guess it's going to be an ongoing threat for us.
You know, I was reading my local paper today and they had so much coverage about Pope Francis,
Mm,
his legacy. They had, I think the Associated Press, analyzed like 8 people who may be his replacements. Um, what do American Catholics expect in would like for the next Pope? So this is a really good time to reach out to our Catholic friends
yes.
and talk to them about this and share
Mm,
their yeah, that they miss him and they want to really see how the church can go forward even better.
mm.
There's
Yeah,
even
that's
one
good.
American in there, Dolan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, EJ's pulling for the Filipino.
Yeah, he would be the first Asian Pope.
Yeah,
They're,
Cardinal Tagle, I heard.
huh? What?
Cardinal Tagle. Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a major contender.
Looks like there's a Chinese one too. That's up for possible.
I think it's gonna be Asia now. Time for
Mm.
Asia
Well,
Pacific.
hopefully not Chinese though, because then the
Yeah.
Chinese already have an undue influence over the church.
Yeah, what's the relationship going to be between that cardinal and the Chinese Communist Party?
Anyway, if they're going with Asian, they should definitely go with Filipinos. Those are the most Catholic people on earth. Like nobody could compete with a thing where they hang themselves on the cross and all that.
Wow.
Okay, well, I guess I'll let y'all go. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Peggy.
Yeah. Thank you, Peggy.
Bye-bye.
Great job.
God bless everybody.
Dale, have you heard whether or not the form letter or the template has been created so that we can send a letter of support or appreciation to our local Catholic